Hello everyone, welcome to the second part of renal calculi. In the first part, we have seen into the definition of renal calculi. We have also seen into the classification where we classified renal calculi in two parts, that is based on their location and also based on their chemical composition. Now in this section, we'll start with the pathogenesis or what is the mechanism behind the development of renal calculi. In order to understand the pathogenesis of renal calculi, we have divided it into four headings. It is supersaturation of urine, inhibition of stone formation, something metabolic defect related to calcium, and some other causes which might contribute into the formation of renal calculi. Let us investigate into each one of them and understand how actually the renal calculi develops. The first and the foremost is the supersaturation of urine. It's very interesting to understand that when the urine becomes supersaturated, what is the meaning of supersaturation? That is, saturation is if we understand what is a solution. So we have a solvent and we have a solute. So if a solvent, every solvent will have a desired quantity of solute which it can mix. But if a solvent is actually containing solute which are far exceeding the amount of actual solute that it was able to mix, that condition would be supersaturation. So the urine solvent contain more solute than it can hold in a solution with one or more crystal forming substances. So this condition where the urine becomes supersaturated is known as supersaturation of urine. And provided the supersaturation of urine contains a solute which do have a tendency to form crystals, and these crystals will further lead into formation of renal calculi. Now, a seed crystal may form through the process of nucleation. So, you might be wondering what actually is this thing that is seed crystal. Crystals are something that we have seen into the chemistry, but what is a seed crystal? How do you understand seed crystal? So, the seed crystal is actually the basic foundation, the molecule which will further attract other molecules or other crystal molecules toward itself. That is why this process is known as nucleation. That is, the seed crystal will lie in the center and it will allow the other crystal molecules to accumulate around it. This is what we call as the formation of a crystal or the nucleation. Now what happens further is the heterogeneous nucleation, where there is a solid surface present on can grow, proceeds more rapidly than homogeneous nucleation, where a crystal must grow in a liquid medium with no such surface because it requires less energy. So this is something your biophysics has came into the action, where it is explaining you that what is happening. A heterogeneous nucleation means the crystal here is actually having not only one type of chemical substance, it can have multiple type of chemical substance, and that leads to less energy expenditure as compared to the homogeneous nucleation, which further leads to adhering to the cell on the surface of the renal calculi. A seed crystal can grow and aggregate into an organized mass. So this growth of the seed crystal will ultimately lead into formation of a proper renal calculi. Further, depending on the chemical composition of the crystal, the stone formation process may proceed more rapidly when the urine pH is unusually high or low. So, I am not telling that the renal calculi will only form when the urine is acidic. I am not telling when the renal calculi will only form when the urine is alkaline. But the fact is, it will all depend on the nature of the renal calculi, whether it is a calcium oxalate crystal whether it's a uric acid crystal, whether it's a calcium phosphate crystal, it can be anything, but the type of crystal will always depend on the urine pH. What is the pH of the urine? The second mechanism involved in the pathophysiology or the pathogenesis of renal calculi is inhibitors of stone formation. Normal urine contains chelating agents such as citrate that inhibit the nucleation, growth and aggregation of calcium containing crystal. So what we have seen, first part, supersaturation of urine. This supersaturation of urine was actually leading into the formation of stone. Now we have a counter mechanism, that is the inhibitory mechanism. What does the inhibitory mechanism says? That there are certain substances like citrate which are usually present in the urine. These substances will stop the formation of the seed crystal or the nucleation process. It will stop it. So now this is a counter mechanism. So there are mechanisms present in an individual in conditions of dehydration or the condition where the urine was getting supersaturated. What was happening was the person was developing the calculi. But here what is happening? That is, there are counter mechanisms which will inhibit the formation or aggregation of calcium containing crystals. Other endogenous inhibitors include calgranulin, neprocalcin, prothrombin F1 peptide and bicunin. When these substances fall below their normal proportion, stone can form out of an aggregation of crystals. Now what was about the calcium metabolism? People who take supplemental calcium have a higher risk of developing kidney stone. So what happens is actually many people say that calcium is good for your bones, so you should take it as a supplement. But you should only take it as a supplement when there is a deficiency of calcium, or suppose for a woman who is approaching the age of menopause, where there is a possibility of complication of development of osteoporosis. There it might be suggested. But a young person aging 30 years of age, just out of his curiosity, he says that I want to make my bones strong, and he goes for calcium supplement. What he might land up with is development of a calcium containing calculi. In the Women Health Initiative, post-menopausal women who can consume 1000 milligram of supplemental calcium and 400 international unit of vitamin D per day for 7 years at a 17% higher risk of developing kidney stone than subject taking a placebo. So, although this number 17% higher incidences is quite low, but what is happening here is there is a continued use of 7 years. So this is a study done that it was administrated for 7 years. So after 7 years, there would be a chance of 17% risk of development of renal calculi. But if these quantities are regulated in terms that what is the requirement of the patient and how often do we discontinue or continue this medication, so that might lower the risk of development of renal calculi. This is perhaps related to the role of calcium in binding ingested oxalate in the gastrointestinal tract. Unlike supplemental calcium, high intake of dietary calcium do not appear to cause kidney. So you are good enough to go with your milk and may actually protect against their development. Now, the other factors like the role of dietary animal protein. Animal protein, obviously, they will come from animal source. So, what is their role in development of renal calculi? Animal protein, then the body needs, and then as the excess amino acid are broken down and excreted, the sulfurous amino acid, typically derived from animal rather than vegetarian food, cause calcium to be excreted in the urine. So, see, it's a very interesting mechanism. Where is it applicable? Suppose if you are taking a case of a person, taking its history, you ask that patient, are you a vegetarian or you are a non-vegetarian? So you just write, he says that I do consume non-vegetarian food. But here you need to inquire some more things. What is the frequency with which the person eats a non-vegetarian food? So what is the frequency? He says, sir, 6 mahine mein ek baar kha lete hain, sir. So what will happen here? If he says that he eats once in a 6 month, it's of no importance to us. But the frequency is quite high. If he says that out of the 7 days of the week, I consume it for the 3 days or 4 days or 2 days. So that is quite a higher of frequency. What is happening that these amino acid, which is sulfur containing amino acid, which are predominantly present in animal protein rather than the vegetarian protein, they tend to excrete more of calcium into the urine. So if this more calcium would be excreted in the urine, that will cause supersaturation of the urine and they will tend to form crystals or seed crystal would be formed. Red meat also contain acid that need to be excreted, and this acidity constitute another risk factor for kidney stone. High intake of animal protein also present a greater uric acid load to be excreted by the kidney. This in turn acidifies the urine, increasing the risk of uric acid stone. Question coming to you with renal calculi. He is a non-vegetarian. The first suggestion that you will say is to reduce the amount of animal protein that he is eating. Promote that person towards a vegetarian diet, and eventually you will see that the recurrency of formation of renal calculi will reduce considerably. So not only your medicines will help, but these suggestion of reducing the dietary animal protein will definitely help the patient to not develop that renal calculi again. Now in other factors also, water fluoridation may increase the risk of kidney stone formation. Now what is water fluoridation? That is presence of excessive fluoride and associated molecules in water. Now this is a classical study that in the city of Jaipur, particularly the area of Sanganer, contains a high amount of fluoride in the water that is coming as a water table under the earth contains a high quantity of fluoride. So these fluoride content might also promote into formation as the people will drink this water, so that might promote the formation of renal calculi. Also, ingestion of vitamin C supplement is associated with an increased incidence of kidney stone. So taking a particular food substance or vitamin C is good. I will not say that we should not take supplements or food articles which will provide us with various sources of vitamin, but excessive consumption is bad. So what we are understanding here that any like here the vitamin C, if it's consumed in a larger quantity, so then required by our body, might lead into higher incidences or increased risk of development of renal calculi. Also, alcohol consumption, binge drinking can lead to systemic dehydration, which can in turn lead to development of renal calculi. Now what is this is referring to? The person is involved in consuming alcohol, but that person doesn't stop with a limited quantity. What the person does, it does it will continue with binge drinking. That is, one after the other, the quantity of alcohol increases so enormously in the circulating blood that it causes severe dehydration. And if this severe dehydration is persistent over and over a period of time, that might lead to renal calculi. Astronauts seem to show a higher risk of developing renal calculi during or after space flight of long duration. So this is not of too much importance. I don't think so we would be encountering any astronaut in our clinical studies, but if supposedly once in a lifetime you get this opportunity to see an astronaut suffering from renal calculi, so you need to ask, were you on a flight mission for a very long duration of time. So that will give you an idea. Now urolithiasis. What is urolithiasis? Here the site is not important. It can be anywhere in your kidney, ureter, bladder or urethra. So let us see the site of impact for urolithiasis. It can be anywhere. It can be either here, it can be here in the calyxes, ureter or the bladder. It can be present anywhere. Now let us look into the signs and symptoms of renal calculi. See, the very first is obstruction in urine flow. So now we need to understand that suppose if we are considering the ureter and your renal calculi is present in the ureter. Ureter do have a fixed diameter and the function of ureter is to carry urine from the kidney till the bladder. So this tube-like structure gets obstructed with the presence of a renal calculi. This renal calculi will obstruct the flow of urine coming from kidney and that will cause obstruction of urine flow. As the urine flow gets obstructed, there might be development of oliguria, that is reduced urinary volume that is caused by the obstruction. Either the obstruction is in the ureter, bladder or urethra. Then post-renal azotemia may be present. That is, as there is obstruction, why post-renal? Because the kidneys are functioning normally, but still the amount of nitrogenous waste in blood is increasing due to the obstruction caused by renal calculi. Hydronephrosis, there is distension and dilatation of renal pelvis and calyxes. Why is this distension occurring? Obstruction is the cause. As the urine is not able to flow, so this obstructed urine will get accumulated in the calyxes, in the pelvis, and that will cause their distension. This is called as hydronephrosis. Usually when we are seeing into an ultrasonographic report, we see that grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 hydronephrosis would be present. Grade 1 will suggest that the hydronephrosis or the distension is not too much, whereas grade 3 suggests that there is an excessive dilatation of calyxes and the pelvis. Continuing the signs and symptoms, there is pain that is present in the flank region, and see, I have demarcated it with this black color, which shows you that this would be the area of pain. The patient might hold this way or this way to suggest that I do have pain. This pain radiates from this particular region through the ureter tract. So you can see this was the flank region where the pain is present, also radiating till the wherever the ureter is traveling. Also there would be costovertebral tenderness, that is the costal ribs and the vertebra might present with tenderness. Cool moist skin, as the pain would intensify, will face cool moist skin. Pallor and diaphoresis might also be present. Frequency and urgency in urination. Frequently the patient might have an urge of urinating. Dysuria, that is whenever the person goes for urination, it might feel pain. Chills and fever, hematuria, that is presence of RBC in urine, and it is maximum time when there is an intense pain. It is associated with nausea and vomiting. The hallmark symptom of renal calculi includes renal colic, fever, blood, pus in the urine, and painful urination. That is dysuria, hematuria, and that is pus in urine might be associated. Pain most commonly felt in the flank region, as I have said you. This is the pain region. Lower abdomen and groin, that is, it would radiate from this particular region to lower abdomen to the groin region. A condition called renal colic. So this type of pain, radiating pain from the flank to the lower abdomen to the groin region, is referred as a renal colic. Renal colic, which typically comes in waves, it's not a constant pain. It comes in wave lasting from 20 to 60 minutes, is caused by peristaltic contraction of ureter as its attempt to expel the stone. So you need to understand that if the person is experiencing pain, so what is actually happening is the stone present in the ureter, so the ureter is trying to expel it out. So there is some movement of renal calculi in the ureter. So either this episode of pain might end up in expulsion of the calculi, or if the other possibility is there, if the calculi size is more than the diameter of ureter, which stands for around 8 mm. So if the diameter of the calculi is more than the diameter of the ureter, it might not come out. It would be an in vain effect. That is, it was non-effective contraction of expulsion of the renal calculi. So these pain might return if the calculi is still present. It typically begins in the flank or the lower back, often radiating to the groin, or in men to the testes. Renal calculi can be associated with nausea and vomiting. Now let us look into the complications of renal calculi. There is chronic urinary tract infection. As I have told you earlier, that urinary tract infection can be a risk factor for the development of renal calculi, and also due to presence of renal calculi, recurrent UTI might occur. Renal obstruction, as obviously we have seen, the urine might not flow sufficiently or completely. Uretrovesical reflex, hydronephrosis, pyelonephrosis, acute renal failure and chronic renal failure might also occur. We'll continue the diagnostic part and the management part of renal calculi in the third and the last section of renal calculi. Thank you for listening.